So the Chiefs made a flurry of roster moves today, with one of them being rather surprising considering he just got here. It was also announced late today that they are to sign a former Eagles defensive tackle. So we've got to talk about that, Andy Reid's thoughts on some of these signings, and more. But first, how about those? All right, before we get into these flurry of roster moves the Chiefs made today, including one that was pretty surprising to say the least, Andy Reid spoke to the media in the lead up to the season opener against the Ravens and answered a few questions about some players they just added to the roster. So there's definitely some takeaways here. Regarding Perine signing with the team, this was made official today, by the way. Andy thinks he's a great, well-rounded back. He welcomes a guy in here that can do both the run game and pass game, saying he was a great addition that Brett Veach made. Then, Coach noted they welcomed JuJu Smith-Schuster back with open arms. He's healthy now, but had the knee issues when he was in KC back in 2022. However, Andy did say this next: "We will continue to manage it," when talking about JuJu's knee. So he's healthy, but maybe there is indeed some issues still going on with that knee that will involve some workload management, kind of like L'Jarius Sneed last year, to which the Chiefs are no strangers to having to do that for a player to help him out with their knee management issues. Oh, and by the way, Big Red thinks both Perine and JuJu Smith-Schuster will be available to play week 1 against the Ravens, though based on how he answered it, I don't think they're going to get a ton of snaps as they both just signed with the team. I mean, Perine just signed today. He did, though, seem happy with JuJu's progress so far at practice, saying he's really been up and going. And with him being around since Monday, I think that means you'll see a little bit more from JuJu than Perine, but hey, we will see when Thursday comes around. Then when asked about the return of Hollywood Brown and the possibility of him playing week 1, Andy's answer was basically no. Quote, "I don't think we'll have Hollywood this week. I wouldn't predict him being there, but his progress so far has been incredible. So no real surprises there with Hollywood out week 1. The big question for me is, will he be available for week 2's matchup against the Bengals, considering they basically have a mini bye after that, so an additional 10 days for Hollywood to get healthy, and that's what I'm hoping for. The Bengals are a whole interesting situation in and of themselves. You got to check out my Cole Breaks the Huddle video that I just dropped today, where I went over the Jamar Chase situation, because he could very well still be holding out week 2, and the Bengals against the Chiefs might not have their star receiver. Next up about Andy Reid's presser is something pretty funny to note. In case you missed it, the NFL recently announced the start of the season that coaches will be required to give interviews during games. Quote, "Each team has to provide a head coach, one in the first half and then one in the second half, and that's for all teams." This previously was an optional thing for head coaches, and obviously most of them said, "Hell no, we ain't talking to you during a game. Are you out of your mind?" But now they have absolutely zero choice. And the reasoning behind this, by the way, is because the league thinks it's good for fans to have more of a relationship with the head coach of their team. Quote, "It's good to hear from coaches. There's a lot of emotion." Well, I hate to break it to you, but Andy Reid said today that he's not good with interviews during games. He's got to do it, though, so he's going to do it, but don't expect much. I mean, guys, these answers are going to be so vanilla. "Yeah, well, things are going okay so far. Just need to stay disciplined, wrap up these tackles, and execute the game plan." We're going to learn absolutely nothing about the coaches or how things are really going during games, at least not from Big Red. That guy hates talking to the media. Anyway, moving on, because the Chiefs just made a ton of roster moves today, and before I get to that, I do want to point out a couple of former Chief alerts and some roster moves made by other teams. I forgot to mention that one of the players the Chiefs waived when getting the roster cut down from 90 to 53 was linebacker Curtis Jacobs. He's a guy that was pretty close, in my opinion, to making the roster, but KC was most likely hoping to be able to sneak him onto the practice squad. Well, sadly, he was claimed off of waivers by the Patriots. So for now, Jacobs is residing in New England with their practice squad. Then today, Aaron Wilson announced that the Dolphins signed running back Deneric Prince to the practice squad, which means the Derek Prince experiment is officially over. Another running back whose experiment with KC is over, for now at least, is Amani Bailey. The Chiefs announced today that they terminated his practice squad contract to make room for cornerback Nick Jones. Jones was waived from the 53-man roster on Wednesday to make room for the defensive back KC claimed off of waivers. The local man who went to the same high school as me, shout out to BLHS, Eric Scott Jr. But after like 2 days on the team, the Chiefs surprisingly waived him from the roster today to make room for the official signing of running back Perine. The guy was here for like 5 minutes and Casey was like, see ya. However, Charles Goldman of A to Z Sports pointed out that the Chiefs will most likely plan on signing him to the practice squad because the Chiefs are the only team to put in a waiver claim for him. That means they feel like it's most likely safe enough for Scott to clear waivers and end up on the practice squad where he can spend time learning the system rather than taking up a spot on the 53-man roster. I'll be curious to see, though, if they add Eric Scott Jr. to the practice squad, who's going to be gone? Because the Chiefs practice squad is now filled up to the brim with quarterback Bailey Zappi officially signing to their practice squad today. So in summary, the Chiefs signed running back Samaje Perine to the roster, but to make room for him on the 53 since the team was full, they waived cornerback Eric Scott, who was there for like 2 days. Next, they then signed 2 players officially to the practice squad today, cornerback Nick Jones and Bailey Zappi. But since the practice squad only had room for one of those 2, they terminated the contract of running back Amani Bailey. Kansas City now only has 1 running back on the practice squad in Keontae Ingram, but with 4 running backs on the roster, I think they're looking just fine right now. I will be curious to see if the Chiefs elevate either Nick Jones or Keith Taylor up for game day against the Ravens, because right now, the Chiefs only have 5 corners on the 53-man roster. Trent McDuffie, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Najee Johnson, and if you consider him a corner like the Chiefs roster has him listed on their website, Chris Roland Wallace would be number 5. The problem here is, of those 5 corners, 2 are dealing with injuries. Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams are nursing hamstring injuries at the moment. No idea if they're going to play. And that's why I think we will see at least one of Nick Jones or Keith Taylor called up from the practice squad next week come game day. But there's plenty of time to get ready for that game, and we will figure it out then. The last thing I did want to let you guys know about is that currently it looks like wide receiver Rashee Rice will pretty much officially not be suspended, at least to start out the season. He's currently going through a civil suit with a jury trial for that being set on June 23rd, 2025. That's a long time from now. And that's for people injured at the scene of the crash that are basically suing him. Then he's also got a criminal case that's in process, but there is no date yet set for that. And the criminal case is most likely what the NFL is watching the closest and has held up any league action in reference to Rice violating the personal conduct policy. Brian McCarthy, the VP of communications for the NFL, said in a recent presser when asked about Rice's situation, quote, "We don't anticipate Rice will be placed on the commissioner's exempt list unless there is a material change in the case. That also means the league will probably not suspend Rice until the conclusion of the criminal case. The thing is, we have no idea when that case is going to take place and when things are going to get settled, or we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know when it's going to happen. But for now, Rice is good to go. I just hope that a suspension does not, please, don't let this happen during the playoffs, because that timing would be pretty horrible if so. And then right when I was about to export this video, Alex is literally finishing up the edit. We just saw that the Chiefs signed a defensive tackle to the practice squad, and that is gonna be defensive tackle Marlon Tuipulotu, and that's formerly of the Eagles. He was released by the Eagles, a 2021 6th-round pick of Philly. He appeared in 28 games over 3 seasons. He doesn't have like a ton of stats or anything like that. 4 sacks over his 3 years with the Eagles, half a sack in 2022, 3.5 sacks in 2023, has racked up a total of 43 tackles. But what this does is give you a little bit more defensive tackle depth that has more NFL experience. As Charles Goldman of A to Z Sports points out, he has more production than any of the other 3 defensive tackles on the practice squad. So you've got Matt Dickerson, you've got Neil Farrell Jr., you've got Fabian Lovett. I would assume one of these guys are probably going to be gone. I also don't think that Tuipulotu is actually signed to the practice squad just yet. The Chiefs are signing Marlon Tuipulotu to the practice squad per Mike Garafolo at 5:20 p.m. So they will be signing him to the practice squad, probably agreed to something. I would assume he passed a physical, but a corresponding move will have to be made. And probably what's going to happen, guys, is it's going to be either Matt Dickerson, I don't think it's going to be him, Neil Farrell Jr., or Fabian Lovett that end up leaving the practice squad, so getting their practice squad contract terminated, and Marlon Tuipulotu will be the next man in that mix. And again, he's got more experience than these guys. He's a smaller bodied guy for a defensive tackle. If you look at his stats here, 6'2", 307 pounds, I mean, that's still massive, but it's still a little bit on the smaller side. 10 total pressures and 3 sacks over the past 3 seasons with the Eagles. So yeah, you guys got to let me know your thoughts on this signing of Marlon Tuipulotu. I think it's nice. It's good to have some defensive tackle depth. There is some concerns there along the D-line, especially if injury were to happen. Well, now they have a veteran with real NFL experience that they can pull from, where Neil Farrell Jr. and the other 2 defensive tackles, Fabian Lovett, he's a UDFA, and Matt Dickerson, he has some experience, but not as much as Marlon Tuipulotu. So you guys got to let me know your thoughts on that. The Eagles wanted this man back, but he's now a Kansas City Chief because this man wants to win some football games. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?